The Arizona Cardinals fell just short of making the 2024 playoffs, but they did take major steps forward in their quest to winning the NFC West and making a deep playoff push, something that they haven't done in quite some time. My name is Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and we're going to break down the 2025 offseason and what you can expect on some of the moves the Cardinals might make. But before we get into that, if you like the content that Ryan and I put out and you want to help the Tracy Take grow, the easiest way to help out is by hitting that subscribe button, tackling that bell, and leaving a like and a comment. Let us know what you would like to see the Cardinals do this offseason. And Ryan, that being said, let's pull the slides here. Even going back to last year, this Cardinals team I just admired because, just frankly, if you're being honest, like at the beginning of 2023, there was no talent really on that team outside of maybe James Conner, Trey McBride, had a lot of upside. And yet they just played so hard for Jonathan Gannon, and they pulled off some key upsets as well. And they were able to provide a lot of positives coming into the 2024 season. And I think they even built on the positives as well. The defense improved. Offensively, they improved. Kyler Murray had a good year as well. Still some things you'd want to see him do better, especially being a former first overall pick. But that being said, he's definitely not the worst quarterback in the league. And also contractually, they're kind of committed to him, if we're being completely honest. But still, he's good overall. I think they still have one of the top rushing offenses in the league. As their seventh overall. James Conner had a great season as well. Then they got a good young running back, Trey Benson, who had some good moments this year as well. They drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. and that was a connection that didn't like. I think the expectations were super high, especially too when you go look at what Malik Neighbors was doing in New York with Daniel Jones and Drew Lock as his quarterback. You would like to have seen similar numbers out of Marvin Harrison Jr., especially myself as the dynasty owner. I would have really appreciated that. But I also think, though, too, towards the end of the season, they started to pick up that connection as well. And if this offseason, if they can really get in sync and kind of just can start thinking alike, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, you're going to have James Conner in the backfield. I think this offense could really take off in 2020 in the 2025 season. I think the defense is only going to keep getting better as well.
Yeah, I mean, this also too, like this was a little below average passing offense, and they were of the offenses. Like you go look at Jacksonville, you go look at New York. Neither of those teams could really run the ball that well. They were very heavily lenient on the passing game as a whole, which just led to more production for those rookie receivers. So I'm not super concerned about Marvin Harrison Jr.'s like lack of production, but all in all, like you said at the beginning, like this team is really starting to take those strides forward that you want to see from a team that has a young core that's building towards something big. Because this isn't, and like I'm going to use the Houston Texans for an example. But to me, the Houston Texans took a little bit of a step back this season. They just didn't look as good. Granted, they dealt with more injuries, but CJ Stroud's accuracy dipped a little bit. Their just overall play wasn't quite as good as it was last year, where they kind of had this like surge of free agents. They hit on a couple draft picks, and then like boom, all of a sudden you're a contender. Where now they've kind of plateaued. For me, this Arizona Cardinals model, like next year, I expect them to be like real contenders for this division. I know they have a tougher division, and I think the 49ers will play better as well, but this team should be really good, and they have a really young core that's going to grow with them, that's going to get a lot of second contracts with the Arizona Cardinals, and I think that is just a really positive thing for this organization. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Defensively, still struggling, I think, on the rushing defense, but all in all, we saw pretty good strides, I think, throughout this, like from last season to this season, for this defense as a whole. And Jonathan Gannon's really starting to leave his imprint on that defense. So let's move on to some of their key free agents. So starting out, offensive line: Evan Brown, Kelvin Beachum, Will Hernandez, Tristan Colin, backup center. It just like not like super critical guys, but just some free agents to keep in mind there. And then defensively, Kazir White, LJ Collier.
I would say those are critical guys. I'm pretty sure that those are all the starters.
I thought Yalta Froholt and yeah, maybe they could be critical. Yeah, they could be. But I believe they have the cap space to go and bring all of them back. They have 70. I have 72.5 million
That's what I
for
have
them
too.
to go and bring those guys back. So I think that'll be like pretty good. And then they have some like Kaiser White, LJ Collier, Roy Lopez, Tristan Colin, or sorry, Dennis Gardeck, Julian Aquara, like just some other rotational defensive guys that I think have younger counterparts, but could potentially be brought back. They have some extra cap space to bring these guys back and probably still go out and get a few additional pieces to add to this roster.
Yeah, yeah, and so Evan Brown was the left guard then as well. Will Hernandez and Tristan Colin did also play snaps. But only 386 and then 280. Isaiah Adams was also there as well. So like they all kind of split spots. It looks like at the right guard. And so that's just kind of where like that offensive line, what was so effective for this team. Like one when James Conner's one of the better running backs in the league, but they were also getting very consistent push uh, uh, a lot. And I think with the effectiveness of Trey McBride and Marvin Harris Jr. and the looseness of Kyler Murray definitely helped overall kind of in that running game, but you still need to have a good offensive line in place. So what they want to end up doing with those guys, that's been a position that they've wanted to address over the past several years, like drafting Paris Johnson Jr. just a couple of years
Yeah.
ago. You're going to want to maintain that core group of guys, like to keep battling in the trenches. But on the flip side, though, too, I think they still need to improve overall on the defensive side of the ball. They were one of the top. They were above average when it comes to sacks on the season. I think they had 41 sacks on the season, and this is like kind of a
Yeah.
pro and a con. But what I'm looking at, like with PFF, like Zaven Collins was their leading sack guy with just 5 sacks. But that being said, though, they have a lot of guys with multiple sacks. I think 12 guys with 2 sacks or more. So nice diversity. But I think one thing that they're really missing is like that stud superstar guy. You like whether it be a beefy guy in the middle like Aaron Donald who can really blow up plays and provide a lot of pressure, give other opportunities to edge rushers, or like a Micah Parsons type guy. And I think that's what's going to be interesting with where they're picking at 16 overall. If there's a guy that they really like, I think maybe they move up and go get them because I think this would really help out this defense as a whole. Because even on the back end too, you're going to have Buda Baker. You don't really actually even have. I don't think there's any as of right now. From what I'm seeing on our list, if we got our list correctly, no secondary free agents at all. So you got
Yeah.
Buda Baker. You have a pretty solid secondary room as well. Areas to improve, obviously. But still, I think Buda Baker is enough. It can absolutely help out that secondary as a whole just with his leadership. But I think helping out the secondary a little bit, getting like a superstar defensive lineman. I guess now it'd be great to know if this guy would be a superstar or not. but still like addressing that defensive line, trying to get like that stud guy up there. I think that would really help out this defense as a whole to even keep on improving because statistically overall they were average, mediocre, so to say, compared to the rest of the year, the league. And I still think that there's a below average talent on the defensive side of the ball as well, which, as I say, going back to Jonathan
Mhm.
Gannon, just like how hard he gets these guys to play and just that overall kind of team philosophy as a whole. So, and then with all the cap space that they have, they could potentially go in and bring in some key guys as well here, like DJ Reed to help out with that secondary. I think he would be huge for the secondary. Imagine pairing him up with Buda Baker. BJ Hill, I think would be very interesting. Chase Young, I think, would be a guy also on the defensive line, help go out, get some sacks as well. Rezu Douglas from the Bills could be another guy, and Javon Hargrave and Charles Menahue. They both have the cap space, to bring in those guys. So I think that would be
Mhm.
very interesting. And unlike last year, they don't really have that many picks. They only have their first 5 picks. But I will say that being said, if you're only going to have 5 picks, your first 5 original wouldn't be
Yeah.
too bad. It's better than like not having a second, a third, and then a sixth and a seventh. So,
Yeah.
but a lot of guys here, a lot of guys in these first 75, 100 picks, I think that they can really focus on in the edge and go get some guys. Kenneth Grant, like get a big meaty guy in the middle, I think would be great. Michael Williams would be interesting. Jalen Walker, I think, could be a roamer. I think he would go well with Zaven Collins. So a couple of day two guys, maybe even these guys might push up to day one, but like Jack Sawyer, I think him with his motor and just also the philosophy from this team and how hard they play, I think he would fit really well into that overall system. So a lot of guys that they can go after, really focus on the defensive line. They want to go secondary. Trey Amos would be a guy, maybe Jade Barron in the first round as well to help out in the secondary and want to try and get younger in that position. But in general, to me, and Ryan, I don't know if you agree, but when I just think of the Cardinals and this free agency, you want to figure out the offensive line, but skill position player wise, you're kind of set there. Even to Michael Wilson was a solid number 2 receiver for the team, and
Yeah.
maybe he can keep on improving. Get Greg Dortch, he also had his moments as well. But I say all that, to me, it's still defense, defense, defense. How can we keep on improving this defense? Because if you look at the division that they're in, they're going to have to play Puka Nakua and Matt Stafford twice. They're going to have to play DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, and Geno Smith twice. Going to have to go up against this 49ers team who's going to come back with a vengeance, with maybe CMC now being fully healthy with a full offseason of no tendonitis. George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk is going to come back healthy. Brock Purdy is, I think, one of the better quarterbacks. I think Brock Purdy and Kyler Murray, maybe this is a controversial take. Cardinals fans, you guys might not like this, but I feel like they're very similar kind of in their overall level. They can play elite games. They could definitely have their overall faults where they can make maybe not the best decisions. And so their matchups, I think, are very interesting. And so they play 3 tough offenses
Yeah.
twice. So 6 tough games. You're going to want to have a beefy defense that can hang with the best of them. And so I think that's going to be their primary focus going into this offseason.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's going to be a good offseason for them. Definitely going to, I think, make up for the lack of draft capital with some of this cap space and go out and add some big defensive contributors there. But I do disagree a little bit. I do think maybe adding a third wide receiver into that mix, like they have Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. I would love to go see them get like Brandon Cooks or another more shifty wide receiver, because they have some big body guys. I think they need a guy that can be a little bit of a mismatch on some of the bigger corners that they play, and see if they can take advantage of some matchups there and get maybe a possession receiver as well. So
Okay.
it'll be interesting to kind of see what the Cardinals end up doing in this 2025 offseason. But let's go ahead and wrap this one up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you want to see the Cardinals do in the 2025 offseason. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.